Greg's articles are right up there with Flat Earth. It's about the same thing. What's going on, folks? Eddie here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. This is a really quick update video. I wasn't planning on putting out a video until all the swappy swap stuff is completed. As a quick recap, what we're doing is we're currently taking the built 1.4 multi-air and shoving it into the 124 as a stopgap while we figure out all the little things for the QV engine swap. I want to make some horsepower. I'm getting kind of bored. Anyways, I really wanted the next video to be the built engine going in the car, and that's going to have to be the episode after this. There is a twist to that, which is going to be so much fun. I can't wait for you folks to see that. But that's not why we're here today. Today, it's time to talk about something. I've mentioned before that John Bushbaum is one of my closest friends. Now, to those of you who haven't caught on, and through the messages I'm getting the impression that not everyone's really clear on this, John Bushbaum owns Torque Motorsports. Him and his wife started that company multiple years back, and yeah, that's their business. John and I have become friends over the last while, and as a result, John and I have a different relationship than most people will have with John Bushbaum. And you know, fair enough. I don't have a relationship with your mom. I guess the real question here is, how did that happen? Why are John and I friends, and what pushed this to occur? Before we go there, let's roll back to why I'm doing this. Probably the 100th defamatory post towards me by Compulsion has been posted today, and the thing they want to talk about is me and John. Compulsion has a hard time believing that there could be someone that wants to make videos on their own time for fun about his car, and actually include Torque Motorsports. How dare you? You asshole! Now, you're probably wondering where this animosity came from and why they would take all this time to sit here and try and pick on me. Well, it's not a new thing. Compulsion has been picking on me for about 4 years. Now, do I particularly care and does it bother me? It doesn't bother me in the least, but I'm tired of being really quiet in terms of the YouTube videos about it. I've been doing these videos for over a year, and I've tried to keep, for the most part, things silent. In some of the streaming, yeah, sure, we can talk, but ultimately in the videos, I've been trying to keep it down. But the reality is, I can't stand Compulsion. They have been a horrible, horrible group of people towards me, and they're the reason that John and I are friends. When John and I first met, John didn't even like me. I was just a customer, and if anything, I probably annoyed him a little bit. But the thing that pushed John and I together was pushing the Fiats. So my first Fiat 500, I offered up to John to figure out how to tune, because no one had figured out how to tune one of these Fiats yet. So I offered up my 500 to be a development car. Like, figure it out, I don't care, it gets blown up, whatever, it's a Fiat. So, some back and forth, and lo and behold, John ended up using my car to try and develop a tune for the platform. I didn't have to pay for that tune. That was actually really cool. And that's usually when someone uses your car to develop a tune, atypically that person usually doesn't end up having to pay for that tune if it's being marketed to the community. And that's a general thing in most tuning companies. So yeah, I got the tune in my Fiat 500 for free. Super cool. Free tunes are awesome. We all know how much tunes cost. That was freaking cool. That's good. I drove my car for a while like that. I was really happy. At that point, you know, that wasn't my first mod. I already had an intake on my car. I had my Compulsion V2 intake. It was a little silicone intake thing. I've told a little bit of this story before, but essentially, John put a bug in me that made me want more horsepower in a Fiat. It's the dumbest bug in the world, horsepower in a Fiat, and especially for someone who particularly likes drag racing. Yeah, I know, I should probably be into different cars, but it is what it is. Anyhow, I wanted more out of it. So I brought the car down to John, and we'd agreed that we're gonna spend some time seeing how much power could be pulled out of this car. Started dyno tuning the car again, and John and I sat in his shop for 2 days. This was my first real experience with a long tuning session. I let John have my car for a couple months when he was developing the tune for the car. I hadn't sat through this process. So I was sitting through this process with John. We're both sitting there banging our heads off a wall. I wanted 200 horsepower. That's what I really wanted. I wanted to see that 200 wheel horsepower. At that point in time, the car had a full catless 3-inch exhaust. It was a loud ass car. It was ready to make some power. But for some reason, it just would not go past 192 horsepower. I'm pretty sure it was 192. If you want to look up any of these numbers, a lot of what I'm talking about is actually a historical record over on Fiat500USA.com. There's a forum attached. It is well, it's probably the oldest, biggest archive of Fiat information there is. It used to be the most popular forum, but it was then... I would actually encourage you folks to go look at that forum, Fiat500USA.com. They have 124 stuff as well. There's an archive of these conversations I'm about to start telling you about. So you can actually go read this stuff up. It is there. Anyhow, so John and I are sitting there trying to make that magic 200 horsepower, but it was 190, 192, 191, 189, 190, 192, 192, 192. And John kept telling me, I need to put a bigger intake on the car. What I had on the car wasn't enough. But as far as I was concerned, that was absolute rubbish. You know, I'd read all the documents that Compulsion had posted about their intakes. I knew that their intake was good for over 200 horsepower. If I could go back in time and tell myself to don't be stupid when it comes to reading anything written by Greg from HPSI, aka Compulsion, I probably would never have bought even that intake from those guys. Anyhow, so John decides he's just gonna do it. So I was like, fine, John, have fun, put a bigger pipe on the car. I thought nothing was gonna happen. But it made a 10 horsepower increase automatically. I broke 200 horsepower because of a pipe. Now, at that time, that didn't make me mad at anyone. You know, I understand dynos well enough that different dynos show different numbers. So it didn't really bother me too much. So I went on to the forum and I was like, hey guys, check this out. This intake's good to a point because people are chasing numbers and I want to show what I had actually experienced. Well, that ended with one of the owners of Compulsion coming in and ripping on me, claiming that I now worked for Torque essentially, which has never been the case. I've never worked for Torque. I do not work for John. That said, I've definitively given John help with some IT problems. There's a couple things I've done for John over time. The first thing I did, and it's probably the thing I'm the most proud of that I've done for John, and John's never had to pay me for anything. There's never been a need. I do these things for fun. But firstly, the torque-tuned logo, that was me. The first time when I went to bring my car down to John, myself and my girlfriend at the time were sitting there at John's shop waiting for him, looking at the logo across the bay door. And my ex, she's a really good designer. She's a really good graphic designer. Both of us are sitting there quietly staring at it. We're like, that's awful. So Lynn, her name is Lynn. So Lynn and I are sitting there staring at this logo, and both of us at the same time are like, oh, I want to rebrand this company. Both of us had just participated in a rebranding for another company recently before that was kind of fun. That didn't happen right away. I think we might have made a comment on the branding the moment we met John in person, but you know, a couple years later, yeah. I ended up giving John a design. I talked to him first and asked him if he'd let me do a new design for his software, because the design guy in me, it just was irritated. I didn't like it. So I ended up creating the torque-tuned logo. I'm happily quite proud of that. I never asked for any money for that. It's just something I did for John. There's a couple things that I can think of that John did for me just because it's my car. He was curious and he wanted to know what was going on. The whole series you saw recently with the PCV system being rebuilt, that was something John just wanted to do. And it was a curiosity more than anything else. It's also why people keep asking when it's coming to market. I have no idea. I don't know if John wants to put it to market. It's ask him. But ultimately, he just made it to try and fix an issue that was a curiosity. So that was something John just did. It was a fun little project for us. It was a curiosity, and I never had to pay for that. So to be abundantly clear, my tuning, when John tunes one of my cars, because after that 500, my Fiats are what John has used to develop for the Fiat market ever since. So, you know, when it comes to tuning, it's very rare that I need to pay for anything. The only thing I ever really need to pay for my tuning is my physical handheld. I don't get hardware for free from John. I have to buy it like anyone else. A good example is I just posted in social media my clutches. Well, I had the QV clutch and the 124 clutch, and they've both been resurfaced, and I had to buy the clutches, and I'm paying for them to be developed. Like that's my money that I'm paying for these things to be done. Just because it's going into my car and I make videos, or this was happening before I ever made videos, it's just me buying parts to go on my car. You know, a lot of stuff that happens with my car wouldn't happen without John because, you know, he has a lot of knowledge that I don't have, and yeah, maybe he's a bit of a bad influence me on decisions to do crazy ass car things. Sometimes he's a very good influence in terms of how to go about it. The other thing I've helped John with was some email issues. He was having some mail server issues, and the people who actually take care of his IT couldn't figure it out. I have a specialty in mail servers. I'm good with mail servers. Lastly, I've made him a new website that he hasn't put up yet. I didn't charge him a dime. It's just a website. This is just what I do. My friends are probably some of my favorite things in the world. I don't have a boatload of friends, but the ones that I do have, they're important people to me. John's one of them. John is his entire family. When I go down to work on my car, I don't have to get a hotel these days. I actually go and stay with John. This is what friends do. Anyhow, I have no shame in helping John with his IT needs. I'm happy to help him with his IT needs. I do it for all of my friends. God, actually I'll have a bill to pay when I get down there. Yeah, so I need to pay John for the head bolts. John covered the clutches when they went out to his supplier, so I need to pay the bill for that. At the end of the day, I have to pay. You know, money has to go out of my pockets too. I've had people, based on what other people have told them on the internet, think I'm sponsored by like FCA and whatnot. It's not the case at all. Like, give me a break. My engine and transmission was about $14,000 by the time all was said and done. My built engine, even the built engine, come on, like seriously, in the course of this year, what I've spent to do the QV swap and things for the 124 is about the cost of a new Abarth 500 in the States. I'm not sitting here being handed free shit left, right, and center. Let's be abundantly clear. As much fun as it would be to work with John in a shop every day, we don't. The reality is, I live in Canada. Torque Motorsports is in the United States of America. When I go to see John, it's a 3-hour drive and a border crossing. In my daily life, when I started Pistons and Petrol, I was still working for the social services company that I'd been working for most of the last 10 years. My career, up until I switched to IT, was working with kids with autism. And I did that for a while before I switched back into the IT world, and I'd done IT in Vancouver for about 8 years after that. So I've never worked for John, but that was the narrative that at that moment Euro Compulsion started to paint. And I never really paid much attention to what they were doing publicly until this moment. At that point, I started paying attention. And if you go back and read through history, and I would encourage you to use things like the Wayback Machine if you want to go read anything written by someone like Greg. Don't trust them to not change things over time. Fortunately, archive.org has something called the Wayback Machine, which essentially archives the internet. So you can go back and read old articles written by people, and they have no ability to doctor it. Needless to say, I had a bad taste in my mouth after having Chris from Euro Compulsion rip on me. And this isn't the last time I've had an issue with Chris. The next thing that really bothered me was a series of articles written by Greg. Now, Greg is HPSI, but HPSI and Euro Compulsion are the same company. They like to throw them around and mix it up to, keep themselves out of trouble sometimes, but ultimately, same company. So the next thing that really bothered me was Greg started writing this article. It was to do with intakes. I think a lot of it was around this intake called the Holy Cowl. And this intake called the Holy Cowl from ATM is one of the best intakes you can buy for a Fiat. They found the best place to draw air from for a Fiat without going into the fender well was inside of the cowl. And they invented this great intake for it. Greg, under the guise of not being from Euro Compulsion, wrote this whole article about how horrible essentially that thing is and how great the Euro Compulsion intakes are. The fact that he tried to pass this off as a non-biased comparison is fucking reprehensible. Greg's job at Compulsion is essentially a spin doctor. He has written countless articles that do nothing but try to spin public opinion on fact. The biggest debacle that has ever come from that individual was the damage he's done into the world of Fiats and dynos. His bullshit has tried to convince so many people over so much time that you can't dyno a Fiat. Now, I'm going to play a really quick little clip for you. This is coming from a documentary that I'm working on for later this year. It's going to take some time, but this is going to be amazing. But listen to this clip really quickly. So what we see in terms of the power curve on the dyno, what's that power curve on the dyno going to look like in comparison to the power curve you see on the road in real driving conditions?
Well, if you're in a really high gear, I think it'll be very similar. If the vehicle's accelerating the same rate that the chassis dyno inertia is accelerating.
Okay.
But what you'll find in lower gears, right, because usually chassis dyno pulls up pretty slowly, right?
Yes.
Especially in low output cars. You'll find that you'll be at a higher RPM before you get to your peak boost number.
Greg wrote a letter. Well, it was a letter, it was an email, but Greg wrote an email to another company to try and get them to try and stop me from talking to you people about dynos. He wrote an email to someone to try and get me to stop. He thought they had the power to stop me from talking to you about putting cars on the dyno because it breaks his fucking narrative. Essentially, this narrative is created that you can't dyno a Fiat. And Greg went to great lengths writing giant, dumb articles on the subject. We're talking like Greg's articles are right up there with Flat Earth. It's about the same thing. It's a complete bullshit narrative. If you see anything from this individual, here's your best bet. Walk away. That little interview I showed you a few moments ago, well, this debate's been going on a long time. I've tried to somewhat keep it out of the Pistons and Petrol videos, but I did post up that chunk of an interview just to show some folks that, yeah, it's true. You can dyno the car. Dynoing the car is absolutely fine. The actual problem is catalyst efficiency. So I posted that up, and lo and behold, all of a sudden Compulsion's horsepower numbers on their website went down. Compulsion had these really crazy claimed horsepower numbers all over their site based around their narrative of horsepower. And when this engineering piece was dropped, magically they went down. I can't figure out how that happened. Again, truth broke the narrative. And that is the tendency, and that's been what's happening a lot with these folks lately. As a result, they've become a little belligerent and aggressive. The whole reason I'm making this video is the fact that Greg from Compulsion decided to post up, oh my god, their forum. Oh. Okay, 1 second. So Greg decided he was going to post up his issue with me and John. Whatever, if you had an issue with me and John, you probably shouldn't have poked at me in the first place. You're the reason John and I are friends. Good job, Greggy boy. Kisses, love you. That brings me on to the next thing. This is just so telling and demonstrates their marketing so well. Compulsion drove another person to essentially close their forum. They opened up their own forum, but if I was going to start a forum, I'd say it was forum.pistonsandpetrol.com or whatever. I would suggest if John was going to start a forum, well, it better be for his company. So either torquemotorsports.com/forum or, forum.damnfastdd.com, because those are John's sites. So if he's going to make a forum, it better well be with his company name. No, so Compulsion started a forum called FIATS. It's supposed to be transparent. Bullshit. There's no way. I won't even step foot in that forum. With the way those folks treat me, yeah, I could never step foot in that forum. I know that it would be a bit of the IT guy in me is just saying that's a security risk. No, I won't participate in anything they start, but that is very deceptive. Why would you call a forum as a vendor FIATS? It's absolutely reprehensible. I'm sure it's in the small print somewhere, but who cares? This is the type of behavior that I expect from Compulsion. A lot of people with Compulsion's Phase 2 tune have issues with their cars hitting limiters. It does two things. A, they've got the throttle pumped at the start, so it feels really quick when you hit the throttle, hence, why it feels so good at the start, and then it dies. but they're also hitting these funny limiters. So this is why people with phase 2 have these intermittent issues where the car just doesn't seem to be making any power. Well, even less than it actually does. There's a strong theory, and I'm sorry I can't prove this one, but I'm gonna tell you one last really quick story, and I'll let you folks draw the narrative on this one. But so when John was trying to figure out how to make 200 horsepower in my car, he started developing a new tune, what he would call a 1.5. I hate stages. Why do people always do stages and phases? Whatever. Anyhow, so it was a 1.5 tune, and you know, it was kind of interesting. But my first tune, my first stage 1.5, when I drove it home, you know, I was testing it out for a bit, and you know, it was hitting some certain limiters and running into certain issues. To this day, Euro Compulsion's tunes tend to do that. There was this guy in the community that was really sketchy. He liked making parts for cheap, but he ended up stealing a bunch of money and taking off, essentially. It's not like he was just a really bad person or anything. The guy was a war vet, and I'm pretty sure he was PTSD. Probably not a good combination for trying to do business on the internet, but you know, he had a good heart, but at the end of the day, he was pretty sketchy. Anyhow, so he really wanted John's new hotter tune because he saw that, you know, he was doing something with my car. It wasn't ready yet. John told him that, but the guy insisted. So John, you know, being this guy was, you know, it's hard not to love the guy at the time. John decided, okay, I'm gonna send you a copy of this tune. Now, at the time, it was bench flashing. There was no handhelds in the community yet. You had to actually open your ECU to tune Fiats at this point. So this guy sent John his ECU, and John tuned it and sent it back. Now, guaranteed the thing is still gonna be hitting limiters at this point because this is a beta tune. So the guy drove the car and got really frustrated that it was hitting limiters, but he'd been told that this was a beta tune. Anyhow, he really wanted to just go out and drive his car on whatever at full power with no problems. Guy hasn't tuned many cars. So he took his ECU with John's stage 1.5 tune in it, and he sent it to Euro Compulsion. A couple months later, Euro Compulsion Phase 2 came out, and to this day it has the same problems as John's early stage 1.5 tune. So unfortunately, I can't prove it. I'm gonna end it here, because I'm tired of talking about them. Alright folks, so the next video, it's the built engine in the 124. The weather held up some of the stuff a bit, but it's coming. I'm not putting out any more videos until that happens. And the little twist that goes with it, this is gonna be a lot of fun.